Oh, say yo. Okay. I'm here. I'm live. I'm trying to do this. It's an ungodly hour. It's a weird hour, but I'm going for it. I just really felt compelled to talk about the oversight hearings on the select provisions of the 1866 Reconstruction Treaties between the United States and Oklahoma tribes. It involves the Native Americans and their inclusion or lack of inclusion um, of the freedmen or freemen. So, I want to talk about that because it's very relevant, and I'm excited that the they're talking about Freeman and any sense of it, even though there's a massive sense of lack of understanding of Native American versus American Indian versus Freedman versus African American. There is so much different disinformation and miseducation about all of that. And I feel like this is an opportunity for us to have discussions that can clear this up. So let's get cracking. All right. I feel like the whole thing about this committee hearing, the Senate committee hearing, is that this, the first thing that needs to be discussed is and determined and clarified is what is a freedman or a freeman? Let's understand also that freeman and freedmen, really freeman was used more than freedmen. Freedmen they're using more because they want to say that it was a slave, that these people were slaves, which, nah, that's not necessarily true. Let's get this together. What is a freedman? We need to make that abundantly clear. We need to start really, see, this is the thing, when you find out you descend from freedmen, you should make it your business to really get a forensic understanding of what that is. Like, you can't speak of it without having like a forensic, like a deep dive of understanding of what it is. Because you cannot, if you don't know the history behind it, if you don't know, if you don't go to the roots of everything, you really can't win and defend. What is a freedman? And let's think about this. What is the reason that a freedman in history, or for that matter, an African American Negro persons, were never in history continuously recorded as just Africans or just slaves, African slaves? Why do we not have billions upon billions of records that call us just Africans or just African slaves, historical documents that call us that? Why do we have 14 or more different names that were called in African A1? We got 14, over 14 names, and African ain't one of them. Why is that? Freedman is one of the many, many names that the African American is called in history. But it's that's my rooster. But it's rare that you see African, just plain African, or African slave used in documents, records, or primary sources. This particular book page says a free slave's friend, a free colored American. This is a picture of a freeman, it says. He is not an African. Can I say that one more time? This is a picture of a freeman. He is not an African. But one of those Americans, excuse me, let me say that again. He is not an African, but one of those Americans called Africans. Let me read this again. A free colored American. This is a picture of a freeman. He is not an African, but one of those Americans called African. As I said, for all those Pan-Africans, why are we not from the 1492 time to all the way through to the 1990s and 2000s called Africans, if that's what we are? Why was that term the only term that was used? Why do we have so many different names if that's what we are? It's very simple to analyze what is going on historically. Why do we have so many different names, and why is African not one? That's real simple. He is not an African, but one of those Americans, italics, called Africans. All right, moving on. Let's talk about Maxine. Let's go to the video. Let's go to the video footage of Maxine. We're good. Let's see if I can get that going. Here we go. Let's look at the actual hearing for a minute. Okay, here we go.
Be before the committee on a very important topic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Murkowski, and we wish you a speedy recovery and look forward to seeing you soon. Are there other members of the committee wishing to make an opening statement? If not, we'll turn to our first witness, who is a towering figure in history enough so that she comprises her own panel. We are pleased to introduce the Honorable Maxine Waters, U.S. Representative for the 43rd Congressional District in California. Congresswoman, your full written testimony will be made part of the official hearing record, and we look forward to your remarks. Please proceed with your testimony.
Thank you very much, Chairman Schultz. Vice Chair Murkowski and members of the committee. Today I'm here to discuss an issue I care very deeply about, but has been ignored for far too long. Many remain unfamiliar with the history of those who came to be known as the Native American freedmen and the ongoing plight of their descendants. The freedmen were Black individuals who were enslaved by 5 formerly slave-holding tribal nations and were forced to walk and suffer on the Trail of Tears alongside their slave masters. A year after the Civil War ended, the 5 tribes agreed to abolish slavery and accept freedmen and their descendants as full tribal citizens under the 1866 treaty agreements they made with the United States government. Specifically, the 1866 treaties required the 5 tribes to abolish slavery and to agree to treat and accept formerly enslaved individuals and their lineal descendants as equal tribal citizens. For example, the treaty signed by the Cherokee Nation reads, and I quote, all native-born Cherokee, all Indians and whites legally members of the nation by adoption, and all freemen who have been liberated by voluntary act of their former owners or by law, as well as free colored persons who were in the country at the commencement of the rebellion and are now residents therein, or who may return within 6 months from the 19th day of July, 1866, and their descendants who reside within the limits of the Cherokee Nation shall be taken and deemed to be citizens of the Cherokee Nation, quote unquote. The 4 other tribes all signed similar treaties. Despite the fact that these treaty obligations still exist and are binding on the 5 tribes beginning in the late 1970s and early 1980s, the tribes began to take formal actions to take away the citizenship rights of descendants of freedmen. For instance, in 1983, freedmen were prohibited from voting in Cherokee Nation elections and received letters informing them that their citizenship had been canceled. In 2007, the Cherokee amended their constitution to limit citizenship to only individuals who were, quote, Cherokee by blood, unquote. These actions led to years of litigation that was finally settled in 2017 when a federal district court judge ruled in favor of the freedmen and their right to citizenship. In this ruling, the judge stated, and I quote, in accordance with Article 9 of the 1866 treaty, the Cherokee freedmen have a present right to citizenship in the Cherokee Nation that is coexistent with the rights of Native Cherokees, quote unquote. Following the court decision, which the Cherokee Nation accepted as binding, the tribe has taken actions to comply with the decision and ensure that descendants of freedmen are treated as equal citizens. Before my committee, Cherokee Nation Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin testified that these actions have made the Cherokee Nation, quote, a better nation for having recognized full and equal citizenship of freedmen descendants. Despite the actions of the Cherokee to right the wrong inflicted on its freedmen, the descendants of freedmen of the other 4 tribes continue to be denied tribal citizenship and other basic rights associated with citizenship, like equal access to federally funded affordable housing. My committee even heard testimony last year that freedmen have even been denied access to life-saving vaccines during the ongoing pandemic. It was this testimony
All right, sorry. Thank you, Thomas. All right, so Maxine, I just said that Maxine was discussing her treatment, the treatment of the freedmen as compared the Native Americans, the fact that they don't have health care, the fact that they don't have funding for businesses, that the Native Americans get to go to college for free, and they have other economic opportunities they get government funding for. In addition, some of them have reservations. A lot of them don't have reservations or land, but in Oklahoma, there's a tremendous amount of land that those Indians have. So it's a whole different story, right? So I got sound now, right? Anyway, that's part of what she said. I didn't want to play all of it. But the reality is that, yeah, they do have, especially in Oklahoma, have certain benefits and rights, mineral rights, whatever, land that, may not be available on the Eastern Seaboard. But still, what is a Freeman? Yeah, grand rising to everyone. What is a Freeman? That needs to be addressed and answered so we can have a better understanding of all of this. It is imperative that we have that understanding. So let's move on. Okay, so why do they call us over 14 different names in time? In this 500 plus years, why do we have, out of all people on this planet, so many different names? If we're Africans, we should have been called African continuously since 1492, if that's who we really are. I don't understand. It doesn't make sense. If we actually are critically thinking about this, why we got Negro, colored, black, freedman, slave, free person of color, mulatto, coon, nigger, Negro, Afro-American, black African-American. Why do we have so many names? That's the simple thing you can ask a Pan-African. If we've been African all this time, why do we not have billions and billions and trillions of records that list us as simply Africans? If that's what we are, why is it not documented that way? Historically, continuously. Why do we have all these alternate names if we are not Indian? I didn't even put Indian on there. That's number one. That's really number one. Indian. 15 names. More than that. Keep going. Then you got this, this propaganda of a slave ship. I was looking at this thing and I was thinking about my grandkids and I was like, their pantry, how fast they go through their little snacks and their little food. And I'm looking at these storage rooms and I'm like, how you got a storage room that's only as wide as like 4 people on the ship? How is it? That's not enough storage for nothing. This don't make no kind of sense. Right. No one called us African American until after Roots and after Jesse Jackson started pushing that agenda, along with a few other people. We were Negro, we were colored, we were black, we were Afro-American, but we were not African anything. They said Afro before they even went to daggone African. So why are so many people so gun-ho over African when it's only really been pushed since after 1990? That's the real deal. I mean, if that's who we are, why 15 different names? So then we got to go into research. What do the first primary texts say about the Indians? Because these other, Eurasian type, European looking, Siberian looking people claim to be fully Native American or Indian. So, what did the first, explorers, immigrants, I would say Caucasian immigrants or European immigrants, how did they describe us? That's how we need to do this, right? So this book is written in the 1600s, I believe, or 16, maybe early 17s. History of Virginia, Book 1, Chapter 1, page 140. However, if you, depending on what year, what edition you have, it might be different. It says their color when they grow up is a chestnut brown and tawny, but much clearer in their infancy. Born lighter, get darker. That's the way the babies are in our community, in our nation, in our nationality. Their skin comes afterwards to harden and grow blacker by greasing and sunning themselves. Yeah, if we grease ourselves, we're gonna put that bear grease on, we're gonna get darker and harder. With our skin's gonna get tougher. But you need it when you're always out in the elements, or not always, but often out in the elements with the farming and stuff. So there goes one. There are so many. We're only going to look at two, right? The other one is my favorite one because that's the one that I said, oh my word. When I got this book in the mail, I was like, wow. The History of Travel into Virginia, Britannia, written in 1612 by William Strachey. It's even the language is different. That's how, when you have a really old work, a really old publication, you're going to see that the British language is almost um, like German. Is different. The way they spell things is not the same. That British English is not the same as American English. It's not the same. It's still not the same, but it never was. We have our own language. Most of the words that we use here in America are actually American. They're not English. And they use some of ours. Because why? Because the world uses our words. We don't typically use the world's as Americans, Americans. They are generally a color brown or rather tawny. Their hair is black, gross, not straight, gross, long and thick. The men have no beards. Well, we actually shaved only the older men of authority were able to have beards. Their noses were broad, flat, full at the end, great big lips. That's the thing that floored me. I had never read that a Native American had big lips. Never. Never read that a Native American had big lips. When I saw this, I was like, dang, what? That's all the evidence I needed. Wide mouths, yet nothing so unsightly as the Moores. Nothing so unsightly as the Moors. That means nothing so ugly as the Moors. They are generally taller stature, straight, comely proportion, and the women have handsome limbs, slender arms, pretty hands, and when they sing, they have a delightful and pleasant tang in their voices. What does that sound like? And there are other books that I own that talk about us playing ball and how much we love ball games and whatnot. So where is this in the Native American culture? Like, where is all the lovely voices, the big lips, and the ball playing as part of what their gifts are? Where is that recorded? And where is it recorded for that they are, how are they brown? or chestnut brown or tawny? And how are their lips big, hair gross and long and thick? How is that describing them? These hearings need to discuss these facts and findings. We need to dwell deep into the miseducation of a nation. It needs to discuss these facts and findings of first primary sources that aren't being used in our textbooks and by our historians, because our historians are lying and our textbooks are lying. So the problem is, love Maxine, love the descendants, but they are indoctrinated. And that's a problem. That's a problem. So the Native Americans started talking, and I don't think I'll play it, but the Native Americans went ahead, and this is a guy who's a Choctaw, right? Now, doesn't he look like a Choctaw to y'all? He really looks like a Choctaw. I mean, I think that if I saw him out somewhere, I'd be like, ooh, look at that Choctaw. He looked really, no. Because if anybody was some chestnut or whatever, it would be a Choctaw. He says that the Freedmen, and several of them did that, because what ended up happening in the hearing is that the Cherokee were like, yeah, we did the right thing and we're glad for it. And they was like, woo, woo, we did the right thing, we're good. But the other ones, like the Choctaw and the Creeks, were like, they Africans. They're Africans. That's the bottom line. That's the thing that they were ending with. And he was snarling in the background all while Maxine was speaking. This one, this Honorable Michael Burrage, he was snarling and frowning. He said, we're Indian by blood. We don't discriminate. He said, it's not racial. It's blood. They call them Africans, the freedmen. Think about this. But they don't call themselves Caucasian Europeans. They call the freedmen African Americans. Why don't they call themselves Caucasian Americans or Caucasian Europeans? If it's not racial, why are one people designated some foreign origin that there is no evidence of, and you have evidence that you're Caucasian? First of all, it's very apparent. Secondly, you know it. It's in your genealogy. You know it. You know who you married. You know who your parents were. So why don't you call yourself Caucasian American or Caucasian European? They never do. No one ever does. And the real problem is Maxine and them don't even do that. They don't say, well, how can you call us this? Yeah, they just accept the fact. Yeah, we're native, but we're African American. Oh. Or they'll say, we're native, but we're black. But you're black? You don't know. You haven't read Strachey, huh? You haven't read Strachey. Despite their being mostly European, these natives don't see their ancestry as being European. What is a Native American? And why don't they look like, as Strachey described, color brown, big lips, gross hair, thick, gross hair, beautiful singing voices, wide, broad noses? Why don't they have all those features that Strachey described? That's the questions. This is the dialogue that should be brought into these hearings, where we start analyzing the history that got us to the place where we don't know who these people are and we don't know who we are. But the truth is, we know who we are. It's just that quite a few of the Negro people, the Indians, don't know. They're not all Indians, fine. Some of them are Europeans. But the reality is, there really wasn't but a smidgen of Africans that even showed up here at all. As personal servants or whatever. They're really, even to the admittance of the great Skip Gates, there wasn't but a little bit of a smidgen of Africans that showed up on these shores. That's the current talk. Okay, question. The other thing we need to ask is, if a freeman, like this says, is free, right, straight European, right, exactly. Why would a freeman go cross country? Right, if you're free, okay, let's say, because see, a freeman, by all definitions, and I can hit that too, a freeman, and if do I have the Wikipedia too? A freeman, according to the let's go to the Wikipedia. What a freedman is. Okay, they have it as a freedman. Look at this. I don't know if that's showing up. Let me make sure it is showing up. I don't know if it is. Let me go to, yeah, I got share screen. I gotta go to share the window, and we're gonna go to freedman. Okay, let's go to freedman real quick. A freedman, right? I'm gonna go. Can I go do that? Oh no, I guess I can't. A freedman, I want to go to the actual citations, because that's what's up to me. That's the real deal. All right. So let me see if I can get it bigger. Okay. If you look at it, all those references for a freedman, you got 1998, 2000, you got 2011, you got 1995 to 2005, you got 2021, 2017. Somebody did a PDF in 2017, 2017. Okay, the only thing that's a little bit older is 1953, the Encyclopedia of Roman Law, American Philologic Society. Got it. Let's look at that. We're going to go to that. Okay. I'm going to share that. Go to the, so let's go to, where's that? Freeman Constitution. There, treating. There it is, encyclopedia. Okay, got it. Share that. Okay, so let's see what you can see on the page. But yeah, okay. So if you're able to see it, right here on the side is what's inside, right? And on the side it states that a freedman is a freeborn. Freeborn. And it's on several pages, 20, 34, 33, 233, 235, freeborn citizen. Freeborn. Freedmen were citizens. Free, 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 freeborn. Okay? So that's the only, it's not even before 1900. That's 1953. This one actually is a 1968 version of it, publication date, but that's what they use. This exact citation is what they use to show what a freedman, a definition for it in Wikipedia. So, with that being the case, it's freeborn. Let's go back and start bringing this, let's pick this apart. Pick it apart. Let's pick it apart. Add it to the stream. Let's go back. All right. Let me go in. Let me join you. Okay. So I don't want to be that big, y'all. Okay. All right. So why would a freeman or freedman, like I said, go cross country to Oklahoma? Because they're born free, right? With their oppressor. See, what they want us to believe is that they were enslaved and they were going with their Indian slave master. That's what they're telling people. That's how they are making sense of the Negro going cross country. Well, they were enslaved. See, a freedmen were enslaved. It doesn't even make sense for somebody to call themselves a freeman and be still slave. Make it make sense. Everything that we look up about a freedman says the freedman is free. So why would a free man go with his oppressor, slave owner, to Oklahoma and leave home and family? Because it doesn't make sense. And you know what does make sense? That they're the landowners. See, the freemen, look at this picture. The freemen had money. The government-made Indians were poor Scottish and Irish immigrants. They didn't have money. In the early to mid 1800s, around the time of the Trail of Tears, the government, the new United States, so-called corporation, designated Indians who shall be Indian. And when they designated, they made the poor Irish, mostly Scottish immigrants the new Indians, just like they're bringing in new Africans to be African American. They replaced the indigenous, they were trying to replace the indigenous people to take the land. They use the same methods over and over again, everywhere they go. So why the real reason freemen were forced to go to Oklahoma was because they had the money and the land. The Native Americans didn't have nothing. They just got to America. And they were Scottish and Irish. Word. That's the truth. Okay. So I'm gonna go again and bring my little map up once again. The Indians that we, that are the Negroid people from all the way up top, New England area, all the way down through Ohio, Indiana, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, West Virginia, Arkansas, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, cross to daggone Missouri. Then you got Louisiana, you got Arizona, you got all that, territory in there. You got New Mexico, all the way out to California, all the way up to Washington State. Those people were the Negroid or the Afro-Indians, the Amerindians. But guess what? Now the Native Americans are calling themselves Amerindians and indigenous. They're using our terminology. Yeah, what's in the name? They're not gonna call themselves Negro though. I'll tell you that. They can call them, they ain't gonna call themselves Afro-Indians, and they're not gonna call themselves Negro, but they're calling themselves Amerindians and they're calling themselves indigenous now. That's what the Native Americans are doing. But clearly, the people that are the Plains Indians that are Native Americans, those people were not even seen until after the Louisiana Purchase of 1803, 1805. Those people were seen by Sacagawea, were shown to Lewis and Clark by Sacagawea, one of us. One of us. Those people in the plains are Siberian, Eurasian, Asian, Siberian people. They are not the same. They were living in teepees. They were not the same as us. 200 years passed before the immigrants met the Plains Indian. The only Indians they knew of before that were us. Not that they didn't come down and mate with us, and some of us are mixed with some Native Americans. That's true. But the reality is they pretty much stayed up there. Pretty much. Ooh, they deleted part of my slide. I don't know how I did that. Anyway, basically, we got to look at what is going on with these Native Americans. How come they look more Asian now than Sitting Bull or my father and grandfather? Why don't they look more like my father, grandfather, and Sitting Bull? Why do they look Asian? Why do they? Why does Sitting Bull look less Asian than what the Native Americans look today? That's another question we got to ask ourselves, because we got to have an understanding. We have to be able to speak intelligently on this subject. We cannot let people go around and call us culture vultures. They're the ones who are of a different culture. They have a Siberian culture. The Indians that actually take after them are actually doing something that Siberians are known to do, dressing like Siberians, living like Siberians. That is all Siberian culture. It's not American. And the Eastern Seaboard Indians who wanted to call themselves Native have to put on powwows and shows and pretend that they're like the Western Plain ones. Why? That's not our culture. It's not our culture. The fact is the reason that they appear more Asian now than they did with Sitting Bull and everything is because the Chinese were given the right to classify as Indian in California in 1854. In 1854, the Chinese were allowed to classify as Indians. During the gold rush and during the building of the railroad, that's where they got that admixture of Asian. But then let's talk about why are these, let's go back to the other picture. Why do the Indians on our eastern seaboard, why do we have European looking people in Virginia, New England, Georgia, Florida, all across the country, Texas? Shoot, we got Alabama Indians in Texas. Make that make sense. We got Powhatan Indians in New England. We got Powhatans in New Jersey. How does that make any sense? People are doing anything they want and the government condones it. But let us try to say we're Indian and it's the real ones try to say we're Indian. It's a problem. Let the real ones do what they're supposed to do, and it's a problem because the real ones have land, and that's why it's a problem. And the ones that are pretending they're not gonna claim any land. They really don't have land to claim, really, because they don't have the genealogy. Facts. Let's talk about Mr. Let me get back to, sorry, I gotta get the stream right. Let me get my window. Let me share. Go to the window and share the audio of Mr. Ross. Is that the right one? I'm not sure, y'all. I think so. Yeah, this one. All right, let's get a little bit of Mr. Ross.
Georgia Stories Biographies, John Ross. From 1828 to 1860, the Cherokee people were led by the remarkable John Ross. During a 32-year period that ended with his death, Ross presided over the birth of Cherokee Nation, the removal of his people from their homeland, and the founding of a new nation in a distant place. John Ross was born in 1790 in Turkeytown, in present-day Alabama. He spent his childhood at the base of Lookout Mountain in an area that eventually became a part of North Georgia. His mother was a mixed-race Cherokee Indian, his father a Scottish trader and store owner. Growing up, Ross became knowledgeable about Cherokee customs, but he spoke mostly English and practiced European traditions. In 1813,
Okay, enough. All right, so John Ross was completely Scottish. They say his mother had some Indian on her mama's side or something. Let me tell you something. He was completely Scottish. Look at him. So if he was made to be the government appointed chief of the Cherokee in 1828, then what are his descendants today? Because if he had no Indian heritage pretty much back then, and they kept marrying European, how come they still call themselves Indian or Cherokee? You see, and that's true of all these things. See, they actually dethroned these the Afro Indians and appointed these Scottish and Irish people as chief. Let's go look at Path Killer, because it says so. They'll probably change it, now that I'm talking about the stuff, but they'll probably change how they have stuff listed, because we're talking about it. A lot of information might be disappearing, so get ready for it. Where is that? Let's see my Path Killer stuff. There it is. All right, look at Path Killer. All right, Path Killer. The thing I want you to see about Path Killer is this. Right under, let me get it bigger because I want you to really see it. Right under where it says Cherokee National Leader, it says Path Killer was the last hereditary chief of the Cherokee. He was the principal chief of the Cherokee Nation from 1811 to 1828. He was preceded. He was not followed by preceded by, so before him was Black Fox. And Black Fox ain't white. And he was succeeded by Charles Hicks, followed him. He is known as the last full-blooded national Cherokee chief. The rest of them were appointed by the government. Yet on this hearing, that the U.S. government was stating, oh, we don't get involved with Indian affairs. The man from the Interior Office said, oh, the government doesn't interfere. Baby, y'all been interfering since the daggone 1700s. Let's be honest. Stop lying. Stop lying. So that's the difference. What happened after the what is the last Indian War, which was really that's what the Nat Turner Uprising was. It was the last Indian War, because nobody explains what led to the Trail of Tears or the Indian Removal Act. Why did they have to remove them? Well, because we were still united. are free to roam the countryside and have guns, Indian relatives helped us gear up and fight when they was trying to make some of us forever slaves. That's the problem. That's why the Trail of Tears happened. How you going to teach children and adults about the Trail of Tears and you ain't got no rationale for why it happened? None. We just accept it like, yeah, they just took a bunch of slaves. A bunch of I'm sorry. Yeah. They just, I hope y'all can hear me. They just took a bunch of daggone and a batch of Indians. Okay, just you need to understand the Indians differently and the Negroes and the freedmen. We have to have a better understanding of what happened. The Trail of Tears made them say, first of all, before the Trail of Tears, they outlawed anybody dark skinned, anybody who looked Negro from claiming to be an Indian. That happened as early as 1756, the Act of 1756. You couldn't call yourself Indian. Even if you had 3 grandparents, that's what the act said. If you had 3 grandparents that were Indian, you still could not call yourself Indian. Period. Let's roll with that. Let me see if I gotta get my slides together. Okay. That's the fact. Let's go to the slides. All right. No, we gotta go to. All I gotta do is do that. Okay. So with that, let me blow it up for y'all. So okay, basically, you gotta look and see that there's a difference of the Eurasian natives versus the first contact Indians. You gotta understand who's who. You gotta understand. Let me remove this. You got to understand that down the bottom, you see that TP? That's a picture of Siberians. You see that musician down there? Somebody gave me the video of him playing the flute, telling like I don't know what an Indian is. I got to have a fine example of what an Indian is. Baby, that's a Eurasian. He's dressed with the same colors. He looks the same. They live in the same. How you going to call this here, this TP, that's Siberian, straight from Siberia. Google the Siberians, you'll find this. Understand that they don't have crown patents. They didn't grow corn. They didn't grow tobacco. They weren't in the revolution. They were not affected by a law, an act in 1856 that said if you are Negro, you cannot call yourself Indian. That wouldn't be applied to them. They aren't the same. Sure, they were treated bad, but they're foreigners and they are treating us badly when we already have had enough done to us. They're adding insult to injury. And now we got Africans coming over to do it all over again. Because why? We're embracing the daggone idea of being African. And now they got the replacement Africans to come over and step on us and crush us till we're gone. That's why it's imperative that you know for sure who you are and you understand who the players are in this daggone battlefield. Indigenous Indians were the first contact people who were described as being brown, chestnut brown, and copper colored. And all the colonial primary sources such as William Strachey that I showed below again. Over here in the gold, that shows you about the Virginia law, the daggone the act of 1756 that said, no, I don't care if you got three grandparents that are Indian. You still can't be Indian if you look like a Negro. That law that wiped you off of your right to claim your identity and your status. That part. Despite the fact that dark-skinned Indians were on the money in Virginia, even Alabama, all over the daggone South and the Eastern Seaboard, we had our images on ads, on everything. And also we had businesses, and we had 11 Negro colleges, which all started as Indian removal schools. Why do our HBCUs, why did they all begin as Indian removal schools? Who are the Indians, y'all? Why is there an Indian graveyard on Hampton's campus? Explain these things. On the bottom is the Accomax daggone court records where we were fighting for our land in 1640. What kind of primitive people living in teepees are going to court about land in 1640? Where were the Native Americans then? This is what we need to be saying in the courtroom when they're having this hearing. That's what these daggone descendants of the Freedmen need to know. They need to have facts. They need to have data. They need to do research. You can't just go in there and say, because of the Act of 1866, you need to be able to find who exactly you are, and don't let nobody tell you you were a slave. It has not been proven that you would descend from slaves that were freemen. Freemen does not mean slave. It means they were free men and women, born free. You going to a Senate hearing should know that. And you should speak that into the daggone atmosphere and into the universe. What about the government chosen? So, okay, so the 1756 was the first time they started to select Indians, right? They selected Indians that they wanted to classify as being Indian. The immigrants were the chosen Indians. If you didn't appear brown, you could identify as fully Indian. So basically, only the pale skinned folks could be Indians. The people that were dark Afro-Indians were either Negro, colored, freedmen, mulatto. Period. They gave us other names, but baby, they still didn't give us African. Let's go back to that. They gave us other names so we wouldn't be attached to the land, but they still didn't give us African. Yeah, they were able to pay a $5 tax so that the daggone European immigrants could claim to be Indian. And they still are claiming to be Indian, and they don't even mention the fact that they are totally European. They don't even mention it. The Dawes rolls are filled with European people. We joined the Revolutionary War, but we have to understand this country was colonized by a nation by a world of immigrants. Not just British. It's not a British colony. It's an international colony. Accomac Zena Rome mentioned to me during the live the other night that someone came in. She works in the National Archives, and a researcher came in there, a professional researcher, a historian came in and said that the United States and other places is called the United Nations of the West. I said this is just the United Nations. It's not the United States. All kinds of people invested and fought to take this country. They couldn't just beat us with just the Brits alone. In fact, the Brits were really not our enemies. They were trying to keep these heathenistic pirates off of daggone encroaching on our land. But everybody was mad at Britain because they daggone savaged everybody throughout Europe. So when they had the chance to get back at Britain, they took it, and they took what was ours as well. The Trail of Tears was the Indian Removal Act. These people that are saying that they're native, they're not present for the 1756 Act. They're not present for the Indian War that they're going to set off, the Indian Removal Act. They're not present for 1812, and they're barely even there for 1865, the day for the Civil War. How many Native Americans are listed as being slaveholders? Where's their list? Because there's lots of Negroes that are listed as having slaves and being free. Indians are known to have been slaves, but where are the Native Americans today? Where are their records of it? Where are their family records? The 1866 treaty that they're talking about, the treaty was really about getting these selective native replacement pale-skinned Indians to divide up land and give it to the government. The treaty was about getting the replacement appointed Indians to give up the dark Afro-Indians' land. That's what it did. They say that a freedman is a slave freed of the Indian slave owners. That's what these people, even daggone Maxine, even the descendants are saying that. Well, we the Indian, we were our Indian slave owners. We were the slaves of the Creek Choctaw and the no, you were not slaves. Where do you have it documented that you were their slaves? Do you have the records to show you were actually enslaved by them? Are you on a slave record? Because boo, we got plenty of records of Negroes being slaves. We got plenty of records of Negroes being slave owners. So are there records of these Native Americans being slave owners? Where are those records? Because Carter G. Woodson put together a myriad of records of the Negro being slave owners. And the Negroes are the Indians. So where are the American Indian slave records? I haven't seen that compilation of information. Where do I find that? Where do I find that compilation? Okay, the other thing is that people don't know how to look at slave records, right? So this is a slave record, a slave schedule. The people on the side that says names of owners, y'all, those are the names of damn owners, period. They are black, brown, whatever you want to call it. All these 5 or 4, 3, 4 people at the top are brown or black, whatever you want to say. Same with the other side of the chart. The 2 at the top, brown. The same as their slaves. Savage, brown. Willis, brown. Black. All these people are black. These people that are slave owners are black. People don't know how to look at records. They don't know how to look at records. They think that these people are white folks. They're not. The first contact Indians of America were brown, colored, Negroid, Afro-Indians. This can be verified by primary written descriptive accounts as well as early artistic drawings of Indians. Like it says, a color when they grow up is chestnut, brown, and tawny. Let's not get it twisted. That's what we should be talking about. Why are you guys in a position where you're telling us that we're African American? Baby, you're European. We got laws to tell us what we were and what we weren't allowed to call ourselves. We got laws to prove it. What is your laws that says that you're more Indian? The laws tell us that the pale skins were allowed to call themselves Indian and they were straight Europeans. That's what the law tells us. This is a breakdown of what the law did. There has been a systematic historical legal dissolution of the identity of the first contact Afro-Indians, period, preventing us by penalty of death from claiming our American Indian status or identity. The 1556 Act of Afro-Indian Dissolution, my word, destroyed the Afro-Indians' right to ever claim to be Indian, even if they had 3 Indian grandparents. Then came the Indian Removal Act, which removed both pale Indians classified as Indians by the government, and darker Afro-Indians classified as Negro and freedmen to Oklahoma. It removed both those Indians because they was kin. Some of them were kin. Some of them were, let me tell you something. The reality is a lot of them daggone pale skin Indians, they were our slaves. That's the reality. And we looked out for them. So this whole thing about we being their slaves, baby, don't you fall for that. Don't you fall for it. The word freedmen or freeman is recorded in connection with the Freedmen's Bureau and the Freedmen's Bank and also the builders of the HBCUs. The word is not connected to slavery, except by these oppressors and these freaking overseers that want you to think that it's a slave word. It has nothing to do with being a slave. It means you're born free. That's what freeman and freedman means. In addition, the Wikipedia definition, the oldest citation that's in there, is from the 1957 German dictionary, which dictionary of law. Sorry, I didn't make it clear. It was a German dictionary of law. And in that German dictionary of law that I showed you earlier, it stated that a freeman is a person born free. Conversely, the 1956 Act turned the pale-skinned Indians, mostly Caucasian Europeans, into Indians. Question: why would an Indian Removal Act remove non-Indians? If the freemen are non-Indians, why would the Indian Removal Act remove them? Couldn't they just use them over here as slaves? Why would they take them to daggone Oklahoma? Most of the farming was done on the eastern side. Why would they remove them if they're non-Indians? It's an Indian Removal Act, not a non-Indian Removal Act, not a Slave Removal Act. Make it make sense. The Negroes, aka darker Afro-Indians, were also removed because they too were Indians who were not slaves, but they were landowners and slave owners. And the government changed the name of Indian again from Negro to freedmen or freemen to conceal that they were dark Afro-Indians. This again separated them from their identity as Negro Indians and their rights to their land. That's what it was. A mechanism to separate you from your identity and your land. And the thing that we should be focused on right now is to repair and regain and repatriate our identity and get back our land. That should be our focus, period. Historians called the dark Afro-Indian freedmen. Who were slaves without written records to justify such a claim. Where's the records to justify that they be called slaves? They have none. They just tell us, and we're so indoctrinated, we automatically believe whatever we're told by these lying, horrible historians, media people, politicians, friggin' social media people. All these people lying. Let's talk about it. Football season's getting ready to come. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about in terms of your playing a game. How do you win? If we look at this hearing and us being in a battle, how do you win? If you follow the playbook provided by your opponent. I just want to understand this. How do we win if you follow the playbook provided by your opponent? It's just like football. This claim for indigenous status and restitution is like battling on a football field or battling in war. Think of it like this. I have it set up here. You got all these people against you, all your opponents. You got the celebrities, the movies, the news on the back line, because we're not paying that much attention to them, but they still there, buzzing in your ear with misinformation. You got the historians that's putting as much as they can out there. We got museums coming out. I mean, I saw a website for Black Indians that was quoting information from the Williamsburg Museum, talk about Ndogo or whatever, Ndogo and the freaking African stuff. Let me tell you, I have had conversations with the Williamsburg directors. They know that that is misinformation. They are aware that our whole African daggone display is out of place and not appropriate. They freely admitted it and asked me if I knew of an artist or ability, had someone that could actually change those statues or would be able to work on a project. And I said, oh, yes, I do, because we have an Accomac that is a very, very talented and gifted sculptor. Miss Bagnell, Vinnie Bagwell, check her out. She's amazing. Anyway, basically, that's the thing. These museums know that they are putting out lies and misinformation. They know it. But yet, the African Americans are sitting there calling themselves Black Indians and quoting stuff about Africa. They still clinging to the African misinformation. So we got historians that are battling our minds. We are battling our own minds. The movies are there too. See, I said the movies. The movies are on the back line. The movies, celebrities, news, they're there. They're the cornerbacks and the safeties. Then we got our political leaders, our black political leaders, our Black social media, you know, like all these news outlets that get a lot of viewership on YouTube. And they're just there to distract you and mislead you. That problem, that's a major problem. And some of your indigenous people are just trying to keep you distracted so you're not focused on what you really should be, which is repatriation, re-identification, knowing who you are, claiming yourself and your land. Racism and indoctrination in our own minds, our racism against ourselves, the racism that we use against each other, that is also a major barrier that we need to fight. And then what are we doing on the other side? I know I'm a descendant from a Freedman. Well, that's not enough. But yet I'm using the playbook of my opponent. And I believe what they teach me. So how much can you win if you don't really understand who you are and what how you should be battling? And you're using the wrong playbook. You're using what they give you. How can you win that way? You really can't. You really can't. What I need to say before I go out is this. First of all, why do Freemen want to be a part of a government control, which the government can say they don't control things, of a government controlled nation? This United States is trying to say they don't control the tribes. It's up to them. They're the ones to decide who's in it or not. Lies. You design all these daggone nations from the ground up when you dismantled our identity. Lies. See, that's what needs to be said in these hearings. You dismantled the real Indians and you built these nations from the ground up. Do you want to be a part of a United States corporation telling you who can be Indian? Do they have the right to tell who is an Indian and who's not? What real Indian wants this corporation telling them who is a real Indian? That don't sound real to me. Do you know they give them Indians money and take that crap away from them when they feel like it? They treat them like trash. We are first contact people. Talk about sovereignty, there's nothing higher than what we are. They don't have the right to tell us what we are, and they don't have a right to dictate to us like they dictate their daggone corporation-made Indians. But you don't want to do the work, do you? Nah, you don't want to do the research. Nah, you don't want to go scrambling around finding people that belong to your nation. Nah, you don't want to write all the stuff up, and you don't want to send out all these daggone things and get the daggone IDs and find the place, your land, and fight for your land and reclaim you don't want to do all that. You want to be dead and gone and have your ancestors say, why didn't they do something when they had a chance? What the heck was wrong with my father? What was wrong with my grandfather? They knew it back in 2022, but they didn't do shit about it. They knew. There was no excuse. Why didn't they do something about it when they knew something about it? That's what they're going to say. That's what they're going to say about us. There's no excuse. Not knowing now, there's no excuse. If you just look around for the information, it's here. It's here. Be a part of something bigger. Don't be a part of something bigger. Create something bigger. Be the change that needs to happen. You need to be the change that needs to happen. It doesn't require anything but truth, light, and a whole lot of work. A whole lot of work. but it's worth it. I'm going to say have a good day. I'm going to probably go to sleep. And I'll be back tonight on the Indigenous One show, probably doing pretty much the same thing, but he has a wider audience and he really definitely wants to talk about this. So I'll be talking about this again tonight on the Indigenous Ones channel. You guys have a great, beautiful day. Grand rising to you. Peace.